Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host for today. We are talking UFC 316, headlined by Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley. We're going to be talking foreplays like we always do on the show. And listen, this Saturday, I will be in attendance at UFC 316. Very excited about it. If you have not been to a live UFC event, especially a pay-per-view, you need to figure that out and you need to get to one. I may be biased, but I think it's absolutely better than any sport. You're talking multiple title fights on a pay-per-view. It's just absolutely electric. So you got to figure that out. But I will be there and I will be watching my 5% max bet cash this Saturday night. Have that up for clients right now. Since March 2024, we're about 70% win rate on our max bets. I do have a couple plays up right now. We'll be adding to that as we get closer to fight night. So if you want to become a client, the link down in the description. And with that being said, let's dive into the main event of the evening between Dvalishvili and Sean O'Malley. Now, we got this line here, minus 300 for Merab. The comeback on Sean is plus 240. Now, this is a rematch from a fight about 8-9 months ago. And that was a spot where we did place a 5% max bet on Merab at plus 115, cashed us, got us profit, cashed us in. And now it's a lot different. It's definitely a lot different here when you're talking about the actual price, but maybe the actual matchup has not changed very much. Now, if you go back, and which I did, go back, watch the tape of the last fight, look at the stats. I know the narrative from that fight was pretty much, whoa, close fight, maybe Sean edged it out, or maybe there was competitive moments. And, you were hearing a lot of that. And I'm sure, listen, it's a 25-minute fight. There's going to be competitive moments. But when you go back and watch, I didn't really see much of really what Sean did that well. When you go back and look at the statistics first here, and significant strikes was 82-47 in favor of Merab. He had 6 takedowns with 10 minutes of control time. But you also look at the total strikes landed, and a lot of people don't really dive into that one as much, but the total strikes landed was 214 for Merab to 49 for Sean O'Malley over a 5-round fight. And that just, to me, yes, you did see in the 5th round, there was, the body kick. Everyone wants to kind of talk about that a little bit, that was the kind of the hope. But Merab at that point was comfortably up 3-1, kind of fucked around in that 5th round, I think. And then, and he got caught and still ended up getting the victory. It wasn't like we were shocked that he got the victory. He got the victory there. Now, I get it. O'Malley is a high-level guy. The guy's got, high-level striking, good accuracy, good footwork overall. But when you look at it, this is really a spot where, it's going to be very tough to get these big moments off. And that's what it pretty much comes down to for me in this fight, where you look at Sean and, or you look at Merab really first, is that, he's a fantastic minute winner. I mean, he is just unbelievable when it comes to winning minutes, because he could just win positionally. He can smother you, get on you, keep you there. And you're pretty much defensive wrestling for most of the fight. You're just worried about the takedowns. You're worried about what's coming forward. And it's hard for you to kind of plant your feet and fire off your offense. You did see that what was going on in that first fight with Merab and Sean. Now you've got, Sean on the other side here, where, for him, it's going to be very tough for him to find a victory, I think, in this fight. And I think the biggest reason is the fact that he's kind of held to the knockout. I think he has to find a knockout. That's his only out here. I don't see, it's going to be very hard to, outpoint Merab over 5 rounds where you can't get any kind of offense off. It's just hard for the judges to score it. It's just hard for anybody to kind of give you rounds when that's kind of happening here. But if you look at the knockout situation, Merab has never been knocked out in his professional career. He's only been finished 1 time, and that was by submission. And obviously that's not even, I don't even think that's up on the table here at this point. And I just don't think enough has changed over the last 8-9 months that really that you're going to see all of a sudden, is Sean all of a sudden going to be this like elite level defensive wrestler? No, I just don't see it. Is he going to all of a sudden get his offense off for 25 minutes and be the first person to really do that to Merab? I doubt it, so there's just a lot that goes against it. Obviously the price is indicating some of this stuff here too, but I just don't think there's enough really for Sean to really kind of get anything off. And you've got Merab. I think this is just an absolutely terrible stylistic matchup. I think for O'Malley here, you've got the best cardio probably in the UFC, the best pace in the UFC, one of the best chain wrestlers, just shooting, in possibly the UFC. I mean, he has so much there. I think he showed a lot even more when he was going up against Umar, where he was just able to continually push that. And if Umar can't really stop that, I don't see Sean O'Malley all of a sudden producing a lot more, defensive wrestling than Merab does here. He averages six takedowns per 15 minutes. He is going to go to the well early and often, as long as he doesn't mess around and do some stupid stuff. I think this is really a nice setup here for Merab to grind out a victory, to kind of do the same thing that I don't really think that Sean can really get away from here. So in this spot here, I do like Merab Dvalishvili. I like him to get the job done by points. That's sitting around minus 150, minus 160. That has started to tick up a little bit here too. But I do think that Merab gets the job done, and I think he can do it maybe even more convincingly than the first fight. So I'm taking Merab by points, minus 150. Next one here we're going to talk about is going to be Kayla Harrison. She is minus 650. That's right. I thought I miswrote it. Minus 650 on the comeback here. You've got the champion, Juliana Pena, plus 420. Now, I'm not really sure the last time that we have seen a champion this big of a dog heading into a matchup. I'm not even really sure if that's ever happened. But with that being said, you kind of look back at kind of the last three fights for Pena, and 3 fights ago she shocked the world, right? She went out there, she shocked the world. She goes out there, beats Amanda Nunes in the second round by submission. Still think that was a very shady, kind of situation. The submission wasn't really in. Nunes kind of just collapsed and it was just over. Second fight, Nunes takes a lot more serious, slaps Pena around for the entire fight, dropped her 3 times, 6 takedowns, outstruck her, had control time, and just pretty much dominated the fight, from start to finish overall. But the one thing that I think, again, it just shows I am just not high on Juliana Pena. I don't know if you're gonna be able to tell, but just not very high on her overall. But against Raquel Pennington, in my opinion, this is a spot where it really should have been a much better performance, I think, from Juliana. Raquel Pennington, she's gritty, she's gonna be tough, you know what I mean? But she doesn't really do anything great. She's pretty much just a tough. She's going to push forward. She's going to, give you hell as long as she can. But, in that fight, Pena arguably lost to Pennington. And, you've got that fight here. It was 92 apiece on significant strikes. You did have Pena with 2 takedowns. Pena with 2 takedowns. You have Pennington with 1 knockdown. It went split decision. It went to Juliana. But this is a different animal here. And obviously the line is indicating that, but this is just an absolutely different animal here. Now, I know people, I've been seeing people on Twitter, they're taking their shots on Pena. I don't think that's a bad play if you're going that angle. I don't hate it. I don't hate the shot there. I don't hate the submission shot and getting some just in crazy numbers here. But when you come back to reality, I think that there is a lot of problems here for any type of chance for Pena to get this victory here. And I think the biggest thing is she's just massive. You've got Kayla, who is just absolutely massive here. And the big thing here is that the control and the wrestling path are available to Kayla. I think they come free. I think they come as free as they come here for takedowns. You've got Juliana. She's got a 23% takedown defense rate. And anybody in the past who's wanted to take her down was able to take her down. And you go back a couple of them, Nunes, she was 6 for 7 on takedowns. You even have Sarah McMahon was 3 for 3 on takedowns. Nico Montano, who, my God, she's not good. Still was 3 for 5 on takedowns against Juliana. Now, I get it, Juliana. Sometimes, she's comfortable off of her back. She's got jiu-jitsu. Maybe she's trying to throw things up. But I just think the big issue here is that Pena just doesn't have physicality. She's tough. She's gonna give you as much as she can. She's gonna keep pushing forward, but she doesn't have strength. She doesn't have physicality, and that is really where you've got Kayla, who really has that at the max. She has absolutely that at the max. And I think early she's going to find a ton of success getting these takedowns, getting these control time. And I do think, though, that due to the fact that Pena, yes, she's going to be taken down, and I think that's going to happen, rinse and repeat. But I do think also that Pena having some, having a BJJ background, I think she can stay somewhat safe. You know, her best attribute, I think, for Pena is that she's tough. And that is really not a good thing to have when you're in the UFC, is as toughness being the number one thing that we're talking about. But, I think her toughness could help her survive. And I think the jiu-jitsu could help her survive in this spot here, because I do think that early it's going to be hell. I think that then it's going to start to slow down a little bit. I think that Kayla's going to be able to continually win positionally. Every time that she looks for those takedowns, I think she does find the success, gets that control time, and I think she banks rounds. Now, later in the fight could get interesting, where if Kayla starts to get tired, but I still think she can park on top. I think that, even if Kayla's getting tired, I know the weight cut is a lot for her, and I know that, enough people have documented that, but, the weight cut's tougher. Could she be a little tired? Could it drain her a little bit? That's possible. But when I'm looking at this fight here, I think that Kayla gets the takedowns. I think she gets the takedowns late. I think that she's going to struggle a little bit to find that finish, because Pena at least does have that BJJ background. So getting off the minus 650 number, I do like Kayla by points. That's sitting around plus 215. I think that is a fantastic number. Flipping a 7-1 favorite to a 2-1 dog, I think is a great number here, a likely path for her. And I'm going Kayla Harrison by points plus 215. Next one here we're going to talk about is going to be Apache Mix minus 180. And the comeback here, we have Mario Bautista plus 155. Now, this line opened up at a pick'em price tag, and we have seen Apache money has been pretty consistent all week, coming in and driving this number up to a minus 180 favorite. And I get it. You got the current, or whatever you want to call, Bellator champion. He's 20-1, 15 stoppages, 13 by submission. This guy gets this fight to the ground. There's no doubt that he has good, his ground game is legit. I mean, there's no doubt. His back takes are absolutely slick. He's got a nasty guillotine. I mean, there's a lot that this guy can do if this fight gets to the ground. One of the issues that I have here was his most recent fight. And, I thought against Magomedov was really a terrible, terrible look for Apache. I just thought it was bad overall. He won a split decision that that maybe he should have lost. He was a minus 350 favorite going into that fight. And the issue there for me is the fact that he wasn't, the takedowns and the grappling was not happening. He was forced to strike, and I thought he looked bad. I thought he just didn't look that good overall. I thought he looked a little slow. And that to me just, really opens up some things for Bautista here, keeping him on the back foot. And, he just looked kind of out of sorts on the feet. And I think a lot of the things that Mario does very well, can counter a lot of the things that Apache, does well overall. And I think that the best way to really counter, a wrestler or a guy that's going to look to grapple you is really pace and volume. You got to pressure them. You got to throw the volume out there. You got to keep them on that back foot. I think that's a little bit what Magomed was able to do. But I think that that's something that, Bautista throws heat, man. This guy definitely throws heat. He can mix it up, nice leg kicks. And I think that that's really where, if this fight can play out on the feet for as long as it does, I think Bautista has a big advantage here overall. And, Mario is a guy that I think also might have the better wrestling between these two. So yes, Apache, if this gets to the ground, the guy's, deadly on the ground. There's no doubt. But the issue here is that, can he wrestle Bautista and get him down to the ground? And you've got also, the physicality and strength probably favors, I think it definitely favors Bautista. So I think there are a lot of things here that really start to make this line look a little bit off. Plus, you look at strength of schedule here. Mario has faced definitely the higher level of opposition. I'm not saying this is a step up or a step down for one guy or the other, but this is, I think, a big spot for Apache coming in on, I guess, somewhat of a short notice against a guy who was prepared to fight, ready to go. And it, to me, this is a guy that doesn't have the biggest name in Bautista, but he's absolutely dangerous, absolutely dangerous. I think he can wrestle here, get himself as a defensive wrestle, get himself, to create the space, land the bigger shots, land the more impactful shots. And at this price tag here, I do like Mario Bautista here at plus 155 to get the job done. Last one here we're going to talk about is going to be Sergey Spivac minus 140 against Waldo Cortes-Acosta plus 110. Now, this line did open up minus 165 for Spivac, and we have seen the Waldo money come in. It got down to about a minus 125. Now we're seeing the buyback come back in, and we're now sitting around that minus 140 number. And looking at this fight here, you got Waldo, who does have boxing. The guy without a doubt has some fast hands. He can mix it up a little bit in the pocket here, good volume. And those are a lot of the things I think that he can do well, when he's facing strikers and he's able to utilize that boxing. But there is a clear vulnerability here, in my opinion, and it's going to be the takedown defense of Waldo. And I don't think he's faced really, a grappler wrestler like Spivac. And I think this is a clear issue for Waldo in this spot here. And he hasn't even had to really defend takedowns, throughout his UFC career. He's kind of getting, some primarily strikers overall. And over his last 4 fights, he's only had to defend 2 takedowns. And that was his most recent fight against Ryan Spann. And, that's Ryan Spann. And then even prior to that, Rogerio de Lima had 3 takedowns, 5 minutes of control time, found the victory. It was the only loss that Waldo did have. And you have to put stock into that. A guy that was able to actually push that kind of, wrestling and get himself, mix it up, chop at the legs and get him down. That's going to be a problem here. And I think that Spivac is going to absolutely sell out for these takedowns early in this fight here. And he can bulldoze forward. I think that's, he's going to get in the clinch. I think he's going to dive at legs. I think he's going to be able to get Waldo down. And that is going to be a very tough problem here, because I think this is just a bad stylistic matchup for Waldo overall. Yes, he's going to be the better striker on the feet, but I don't think it's going to play out that bad. Plus, I don't think that Spivac has that bad of striking. Obviously, he's going to be slower. He's not as clean. But I think he's serviceable enough to kind of mix it up, cut distance, and look for those takedowns overall. And I think his grappling is very underrated in the UFC. I think it's just, just because he has faced higher level guys and has, lost some, won some, he has faced way higher level, opposition here compared to Waldo. Better stylistic matchups Waldo's had compared to Spivac, who he's had to face. And I think that this is a spot here where the grappling advantage is so massive that I think that he's going to be able to go out there, get the takedowns, and get the victory. So in this spot here at minus 140, I think is still a very good price here. I think that he could, the upside of this is he could look, minus, 300 in this spot here if he really implements his game plan and gets those takedowns. It could be a 30-27, a first round finish, I think is even possible here too. I think that's where this could go here. And I think minus 140 is a good price. So there you have it for my plays for UFC 316. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. Again, have a 5% max play up, nearly 70% win rate since March of 2024. Got that up right now. I'm ready to watch that cash live at Prudential Center on Saturday. So with that being said, become a client, hit the like button, tell me what you think of the main event, and let's cash.